Now it's my pleasure to welcome our speaker of today, Dan Whyte. Dan was foreseen as a speaker at the EPA conference in Skopje, but finally he unfortunately wasn't able to be there. So he has now the opportunity to share his thoughts about education in prison, and we are very anxious to hear more about this from you, Dan. Very warm welcome to you, and thank you for giving us your time for this webinar. Please go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Thomas. Absolutely pleasure to be here. Um, Let me just start with two bits of housekeeping in terms of I will speak very slowly as I know that there are members who will be listening who are not, English is not their first language. Therefore, I will go a lot slower than I usually do. So we'll start with that. Second of all, the slides that you will be seeing are not directly related to what I'm saying in that moment. That I've put together a group of slides that represent us, DWRM, and what we're currently doing. So that is for you to get an idea of exactly the way in which we work, what the model looks like, and how we go about what we do, and then also contact details. So you'll be able to pick up on the slides as you go. There will be in a slideshow, so there will be constantly on a loop. So you'll be able to, if you miss something, it will come back around again. I wouldn't worry. Okay. Okay. Thank you. So, good afternoon and thank you. It is an honor to close this conference here with colleagues, collaborators, and fellow believers in a different future for people caught in our justice systems. Let me begin by grounding this in something real. This isn't just professional for me, it's personal. I was born into a one parent inner city family, the youngest of all of my siblings, and the last to get noticed. My mother worked 3 jobs just to cover the basics. I was surrounded by struggle and survival, not opportunity, not education, not hope. By the time I was a teenager, violence was normalized and money made illegally wasn't just acceptable, it was necessary. At 14, I committed a robbery. At 15, I was sentenced to 8 years in a young offenders institute. That was my first experience of prison, but not my last. A system that didn't intervene when I suffered parental violence and abuse at the hands of my father, didn't help when violence shaped my world, was now here to punish me. And the message was clear. This is who you are, and this is where you will end up. By 23, I was serving a life sentence. That could have been the end of my story, but instead, it became the beginning. And this is what I want to talk about today. Not just statistics, not just policy, but what it really takes to transform a life, to unlock potential, to break cycles, because we know what works. What are we waiting for? When I first entered prison, education was the last thing on my mind. I associated school with shame, neglect, and failure. But one conversation changed everything. A man who I knew, who knew what I faced and had been through, it gave me a hard truth. He gave me that hard truth. He said this: you're going to be here for a long time. Exercise your body and exercise your mind, and you'll get through. No, you'll overcome anything. I didn't believe him right away, but something in those words took root. And eventually, I found myself in a classroom. First, basic literacy and numeracy, then GCSEs, then A levels, and access to higher education course, then a degree, then a postgraduate degree, then my doctorate. From someone who had been discarded by every institution, I became the first recipient of Student of the Year. Studying didn't just give me skills, it gave me identity, it gave me discipline, it gave me purpose, and yes, it gave me hope. That's not a nice story, that's a strategic intervention. And there are thousands more just like it if we only invest. Because education in prison isn't about charity or good PR. It's about building safer societies. Let's be clear, the data backs this up. RAND found that education in prison reduces reoffending by 43%. For every £1 spent on education, saves £5 in future justice costs. In England and Wales, reoffending costs society are close to 20 billion per year. And yet, prison education funding has been slashed. Access to HE in custody remains fragmented, underfunded, and often interrupted by transfers or regime restrictions. This is not about feasibility. This is about will. In Norway, reoffending sits around 20%. In England and Wales, it's closer to 50, and even higher for short sentences. In France, about 59% of people released from prison are reconvicted within 5 years. In Germany, around 48% of people return to the system within 3. That's not magic. That's model. That's decision making. That's what happens when you center dignity. Sorry, my bad. I missed out something. The changes we make. Sorry. So let's be clear. Let's be crystal clear. Education in prison isn't about charity. It's not about keeping people occupied or managing risk through distraction. Education in prison, and particularly higher education, is one of the most effective evidence-based tools we have for reducing reoffending and building futures. Research from the RAND Corporation, one of the largest meta studies ever undertaken, found that incarcerated individuals who participated in education programs were less likely to reoffend, 43% less likely to reoffend than those who didn't. The same study showed that every $1 invested in prison education saves 6 in reconviction costs. That's not just effective, that's economic. A more recent UK-based study found that people who accessed higher education in custody were more likely to gain employment on release, more likely to participate in civic life, and more likely to sustain desistance over the long term. It's not just about jobs, it's about self-worth, identity, and hope. I know this because I've lived it. I completed 3 degrees in prison. I didn't do that because I was trying to prove anything to anyone. I did it because education gave me the first language I'd ever had to understand myself, my potential, and the systems that shaped me. It taught me critical thinking, patience, and resilience. It gave me the tools I needed to imagine a life beyond the senses. And when I left custody, I built DWRM, not just because I believed in education, but because I knew what it had done for me and for others like me. And I am not the exception, not by any means. There are thousands of people across England and Wales and across Europe who have used education, particularly higher education, to transform their trajectory. The only tragedy is how few of them ever get the chance. So what now? We do not need more pilots. We do not need another 2-year report. We do not need more surveys asking if this might work. It already does. The time for exploring is over. The time for expanding is now. We know what works. What are we waiting for? Let's talk about the DWRM model, a model shaped not just by my experience, but by the evidence and by the people we work with every day. It begins inside access to higher education, mentoring, digital skills, personal development, delivered in partnership with universities, with prison education teams, and most critically, with people who have been there. It continues after release. We help people to apply for jobs, set up businesses, access housing, manage digital life. We help with student finance, UCAS, references. We bridge the gaps that most fall through. We're not just building learners, we're building leaders. This model works, it's working, but it's only reaching a fraction of those who need it. And that's why we are here. That's why I am here today, to scale, to replicate, and to collaborate. Not in a one size fits all way, but in ways that respond to local systems, local needs, and local people. We're not just coming with answers, we're coming with questions, and with tools, and with truth. Let me speak directly now to a question many of you are holding quietly. How do we move this work up the chain? How do we approach those with power? Ministers, commissioners, civil servants, funders, without losing the integrity of our message or putting ourselves at risk in the process? Because let's be honest, most of us in this room are not the ones signing off the national budgets. We're not writing the policies, leading the departments, or commanding the votes. We are the doers, the advocates, the bridge builders, the believers. And that makes this both a moral calling and a strategic challenge. But here's what I've learned from inside systems and outside them. Policy is not a neutral machine. It's shaped by pressure, by pain, by persuasion, and most of all, by people. So if we want those at the top to hear us, we have to approach them differently. Not with blame, but with invitation. Not with shame, but with proof. Not with fear, but with a roadmap. And not just asking them to fund what's broken, but to invest in what's already working. Here's the innovation I want to offer. Instead of waiting to be heard, we start co-drafting the future. We bring those in power to the table early. not to rubber stamp, but to witness, to contribute, and collaborate to. We don't just demand change, we show it. I want to introduce the shallow, the Shadow Policy Lab. It's a new model of collaboration where lived experience leaders, practitioners, researchers, and progressive policymakers come together in structured, time-bound, high-impact working groups, not to debate problems, but to design live policy prototypes. We start small, one system, one pain point, one shared priority. We agree on a problem that needs solving. Say, the drop-off between prison education and community progression. Then we bring a coalition together. Someone from the ministry, someone from probation, a prison educator, a university partner, someone who's lived through it, and we co-create a working solution together. The lab produces a ready-to-go policy recommendation, backed by all stakeholders. It's costed, it's measurable, it's scalable, and it's signed not just by those who run the system, but by those who's lived it. This is how we invite power to participate in solutions without having to beg, compromise, or dilute what we know is right. Now, you might be wondering, how do I even get a policymaker to sit in the room with me in the first place? You don't do it with outrage or accusations. You do it with clarity, courage, and an offer they cannot ignore. See, here's the kind of framing that works. Leading with shared goals. Let's start where we agree. Safer communities, reduce reoffending, cost efficiency, public trust. Back it with lived insight. Nothing moves a room like truth. Nothing. Share stories, not statistics alone. Bring the data, but keep it human. One compelling case study will stick longer than 50 PowerPoint slides. Offer partnership, not pressure, not noise. Say, we want to co-develop this with you. We're already doing it on the ground, so we're inviting you in. Ask for something specific. Don't just say, support us. Say, join this roundtable, fund this pilot, visit this project, collaborate with us. And most importantly, stay in your integrity. Don't water down what matters just to be acceptable. Because change doesn't come from people pleasing. It comes from people building. This work is personal for so many of us, not just because of what we do, but because of who we are, who we've been, what we've lived through, and what we still carry. So when we approach those in positions of power, we have to remember we're not asking for favors. We're offering solutions. We're not broken people asking to be fixed. We are a whole people offering a fix to a broken system together. The goal is not to impress power, it's to awaken it. So, what is the real first step? Make yourself impossible to ignore by being too valuable to overlook. Let your impact speak louder than your frustration. Let your results be your protest. Let your invitation be your intention and your intervention. And when the door opens, walk in with your people. Bring the cohort, bring the learners, bring the mentors, bring the academics, bring the lived experience, and build something they can't unsee. Because again, I'll say it one more time. We know what works. What are we waiting for? Thank you. So I wanted to keep that quite short and sweet because I wanted to open the floor to questions. I wanted us to start this collaborative thinking, this collaborative ways of working, this co-designing. We talk about co-design, but we really need to live that co-design. We have a model that works within our justice population, within our prisons. This is a model we want to share and scale. Are there any questions from the floor?
So first of all, thank you very much, Dan, for your very touching, also very touching presentation about the journey you did and many others did and hopefully will do in the future. Um, from my point of view, I didn't get it that clear. It's also said on the slides, but also in our title, to create a culture of acceptance. What does this mean for you? What's all about this culture of acceptance? What does it
So,
include?
so first and foremost, this is one of our principles. One of the principles of DWRM is about building cultures of acceptance. We focus that first and foremost on our educators, our university partners, our educational institutions. We looked at policies around, we looked at the policies that each of our university partners and educators have and work to. And there was no room. There was policies regarding people with convictions in terms of work, in terms of accepting them as students. We wanted those policies to be open to all, to remove the stigma, those barriers that are created by distinguishing between people in terms of convictions, in terms of past lives and past mistakes. Cultures of acceptance is similar to banning a box. We remove talk of convictions. We manage situations. We find ways to include people as opposed to exclude, accepting that we have a past, that people have past, that people make mistakes. But when they're on that pathway to rebuilding, building something better, creating a new version of themselves that we support and we accept, cultures of acceptance.
Okay.
We want it to be a culture, not just a thing that we have to think about, but a way in which we work and a way in which we think and a way in which we live.
But then, how did you convince this universities or higher education schools that they go with you and all the others this way, that they open up for people with any background and be inclusive? What convinced them in the end?
Ultimately, by being living proof of what works,
Okay.
by living and breathing it, and by being able to bring many, many others who are living proof, testament to the power of education for people in prison, the life-changing power that learning possesses and carries along with it. That and that alone. All the other bits make sense. The commercials make sense. Ultimately, we are talking to educators. People want to educate people without getting caught up in sensationalism and what's going on in the news, and therefore it then affecting the way in which they work when it comes to education. Education is an absolute right. It's not a privilege. And as long as they're reminded of that fact, then the idea is that they will find ways to include as opposed to looking for ways to exclude.
Okay, absolutely agree. Uh, Peter Gornishev, please go ahead. You have a question. You have to put your mic on. Yes.
Yes, yes. Thank you for the speech and thank you for the presentation and very important topic indeed. And let me say hello to Thomas, with whom I've been meeting a few times in Barcelona. And actually, thanks to Thomas, probably I got to this meeting as well because I follow him in LinkedIn. Um, um, the one actually I have a pragmatic question or issue because we in the Ministry of Justice of Estonia we work with young prisoners, and we have actually educational initiative for them. And one
Mhm.
of these, they get education in the prisons anyway. They get mostly it's vocational education that they are, getting their things that they are doing usually with hands, in a sense.
Yes.
But more and more we are thinking also about, for instance, how to improve the digital skills. And when we go to the digital skills, then I would say there are like two or even three lines of kind of skills. One digital skills is that they are learning with this vocational education that they are getting. For instance, some planning tools or whatever things like AutoCADs and that are necessary. For instance, for I don't know for carpentry or things. Second, digital skills, if they can get or become, for instance, a programming, good in programming, this is also possible. And third is, I would say, digital skills that they use in their everyday life. I mean, following YouTube, doing bank transfers, basically everything is digitally. And in Estonia, especially, we have basically all the governmental activities or all the
Services.
communication with the government can be done digitally.
Yes.
Here we somewhat we meet some restrictions in a sense that in the prisons, of course, the internet is very limited. Yes, and one thing what is very important in digital is digital hygiene. I mean, because if they are coming out from the prison, then they can get caught very easily in a sense that, I mean, they have not used to use digital tools, and they can, for instance, type their ID code somewhere or PIN code somewhere, and then they can become also victims in this sense.
Yes.
So how do you kind of give these digital skills in this kind of restricted environment where they have only kind of theoretical, way of, trying out these things. So, it's if you know what I mean.
Yes.
Um,
So the first answer to your question, I think when we look at, let's take our model and the way in which we work. So we partner with another organization that created an offline device suitable for prison, for in-cell use. So what they did was strip out a lot of um, that device and make it safer, security to meet the security restrictions of the prison estate. We're able to then upload programs, courses that teach digital literacy, that enable guys to practice in their cells their own digital literacy. Online safety is an absolutely massive component, and that which you spoke to. Guys need to be able to protect themselves when they haven't used the internet, You know, if they're not au fait with doing things online, they need to protect themselves as well as, people around. So we're learning how to, as you said, keep their details private and secure is absolutely crucial. There isn't really a way to teach without the devices themselves. Yeah, we can't teach digital skills, digital literacy, and online safety without having a device to use itself. So, it this is one of those areas that takes some investment. It will take a change in the way in which you go about doing things, but there is a way to um, bring in, a similar system, a similar set of devices to, your own prison system. The first and foremost is just to look at what it would be required. Theoretically, what would be required from your prison estate, from your government, from your government, even where they would allow, these devices into a prison estate. I think that's the way to go first and foremost. So when we find out, what's required, then we can work to those specs. This is a conversation that, I would like us to have. We could further that conversation. I would like to bring, as I said, that organization that we work with. They could bring them to this table to offer solutions and potentially offer help and work with you to find, a device and a solution that works within the same way.
I may add an experience from Switzerland we had. It was in the early times of digitization. We created our own server for basic education, which allowed also to communicate, for example, by email to within the classroom. So it was just the starting point then to teach them some of the skills nowadays needed. And I think today it would be possible to create like internal let's say, a small internet where people could be taught how to use all the digital services also offered by the state. And I know Estonia is very far ahead of all countries in Europe in this. So I think the government, or you may address the government, hey, there are so many people in prison who will come out and they have no clue about how to use all these services. So would there be a solution to teach them in this within the prison or a security system? I think it should be also in the interest of the government that this opportunity is given to the incarcerated persons.
Absolutely. I fully believe that we centralize this system, this system of learning. As you speak to Thomas, I've been talking with a number of different people that we collaborate with in terms of creating a central bank of resources, of information, of ways forward, of tactics that we can all, as member countries, feed into or take from, learn from, share with each other, and then be able to then use what we do to model that to your own justice population, to your own prison estate, to your own countries. I think that's the way to go. If we're sharing information, really sharing ideas and collaborating, then I think that is a way in which we find these solutions.
Okay. I may have just a basic question. How is the job market in England actually, or how difficult is it is to get a job?
So this is work that, again, another part of work that we do a lot of and are involved in, and is happening across our justice estate, to be fair, because there is a massive focus now on building these cultures of acceptance within employers, within the workplace, within different corporations and businesses, so that people are signing up to networks, signing up to agreements to employ people, to look at, to be willing to employ people with convictions. We have to go out and source these businesses, you know, invite them in, invite them to into prisons, invite them into conversations, invite them into to to meet with and see that ultimately you're dealing with people. When we do these things on paper and on a screen, it's easy. We can just label, give people a name. You're a you're a convicted prisoner, you're a convict, whatever that looks like, as opposed to you're another human being. It's a lot harder. As we said, life is about storytelling to a certain degree. So the person in front of your face, inviting people in to meet the people that they gave a different name to, that's just been labeled. When you start to see those and meet those people and understand them as individuals with skills, with qualifications, with aspirations, they start to realize and understand that we are a community of people that will work harder than everyone else. So the more people that are being employed, the more that's being shared, the more that employers, every business that has agreed to take on prisoners, ex-prisoners, people leaving the justice system, are coming back with absolutely great testimonies. These guys are making up an exceptional part of the workforce. They are working harder. They're more reliable. They're more faithful. They're more honest. These are people with a point to prove. They haven't had a chance before to show who they are. And the more that happens, the more that's opening up. People being employed as they leave prison has become a focus for prison governors themselves. They are now um, they're now rated against the amount of people that leave their establishments with employment and employment opportunities. And I think that's the way to go. If we put it back on those who are actually holding on to the people in our justice populations, those who have to release those people, make it their responsibility to ensure that more people are able to find work, that there is more work available. And then we match the job market to the skills training, to the learning, to the education, so that people are a lot more comparable to the job market and able to absolutely respond to job opportunities.
I learned some other initiative from England. I don't remember the company, but it's a private company having these photo booths where
Okay.
you where so they are going to the prisons and
Hmm.
talk directly to the people, offering them also some training,
Hmm.
and will employ them afterwards in their photo studios. So it's
Snappy
exactly what,
snaps.
yeah, exactly what you say. What you say. It's the direct contact between humans that makes possible these things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think we need to demystify a lot of prisons. We need to demystify, going to prison and what happens and who is inhabiting these prisons. We do that by people meeting people and realizing they are just human.
Yeah. You also mentioned it's a quite a nice sentence you said. Studying gave you identity. Can you
Yes.
describe that a bit or outline a bit more?
Yes, absolutely. Before before prison, I was quite a directionless young man. I didn't have a direction. I didn't have a career, didn't work. So the only real label that I was ever given was that of a criminal, or someone who breaks the law. This was the identity that I had, that I was used to. Being able to shift. I think the self-belief came from being able to shift my identity from one to another. That happened by I studied, I buried myself in academia, but it happened because I was accepted by the academic community. Nobody was interested in my previous convictions. Nobody was interested in where I was studying from. They were only interested in what I was producing, what was in my mind, and my appetite for learning. That being accepted enabled me to see myself as somebody different.
Okay.
This was a whole identity shift for me. And along with that, that seeing myself as somebody different came the responsibilities that surrounded it, that surrounded being an academic, being somebody producing knowledge. Um, there was a lot of softer side benefits, outside of and far beyond just gaining that qualification, just learning more about that subject. All the soft skills that you learn as a student, especially a student in prison. Having to manage your own time, timekeeping, being able to be resilient when you have no access to the internet, finding ways to continue learning when your learning is limited or was limited or in any way restricted. Yeah, these features all enabled me to see myself as somebody different. As I built these skills and these these things became inherent within me. I wasn't the same person anymore. I didn't look in the mirror and recognize myself as a criminal. I looked in the mirror and recognized myself as somebody with a plan, somebody with a future to build, somebody with a whole life ahead of them.
Okay. That's an interesting point, I think. So, because I never thought of this, that I never th saw it this way, that education is also changing identity. I know
Yeah.
it opens perspectives and opens opportunities, but I never saw it from this point of identity. That's really interesting point. Yeah.
And absolutely crucial, Thomas.
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely crucial. You if you can't be something different if you don't see yourself as something different.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Um, when you teach in prison, and how do the students there react to your story? You will, I suppose, you tell them how you
Absolutely.
did, what was your way. How do they react? What is their they believe you, or
I,
they are
I,
astonished, or whatever?
absolutely. I mean, in terms of where I will be meeting these guys, I'm coming into a prison, a place that needs access, permission, and access first and foremost. In a lot of these establishments, I'm present with keys, yeah, and I'm also present with my previous convictions. So ultimately, when these guys are seeing and hearing from, they're seeing who I am now, they're seeing how I'm meeting with them. And then when they hear the story, there are a few that are still in the system that still know me from the system. But regardless, when I'm telling a story, when I'm telling my story, it brings hope first and foremost because these guys are seeing firsthand in their face somebody who's been able to overcome what they're currently going through and start a new life. And so much so that the same people, the same organizations, the same institutions that only viewed me, myself, and people like myself as risk, as um, untrustworthy, as somebody that needs to be managed and supervised, etc. To then have that same set of people give me that access, it's the biggest endorsement for these guys, and it produces that hope, and that hope is what is the foundation that identity shifts and new lives are built off hope. And that is the key
Absolutely.
part of it. It's
Yeah,
absolute hope. One thing that our prisons and our prison governors and those staff working in prisons in the UK are starting to really realize is the value of lived experience. The value of lived experience, not just as, not to be tokenistic, but as real people that understand and are drivers of change, drivers of promoting hope and first and second chances. Absolutely crucial. These guys see that, and it's what spurs them on.
Maybe just the last
Mhm.
question. I learned last year, I think it was in autumn, that the English Minister of Justice said to introduce artificial intelligence in all to in all prisons in the UK. What's happening with artificial intelligence now in prisons? Do you have your own point of view on this, and what do you think about this initiative of the Ministry of Justice?
Well, I think the answer lies in your original question, Thomas, in that how do we expect people to do something different if they're not able to keep up with what's going on out here in society? Being able to come out and compete in the job market means that they have to be equipped with the same knowledge and skills as those out here. AI is the future, whether we like it or not. It's here and now, and it will be our future. So learning how to use AI, learning how to utilize, yeah, to work with and work within is absolutely key and crucial. And I think, but yet it is also a minefield because there's so much about AI that we still do not know, yet to discover, yet to find out. So it is and will be a very, very cautious approach by our UK Ministry of Justice. It will be a very cautious approach. I think it will be introduced very, very cautiously, and they will be very circumspect with it. They are slowly creating the infrastructure that will support the use of AI. There's new devices in the prison estates called DEPs, digital education platforms, which enable restricted use of the internet, Whyte's listed sites,
Yeah, yeah.
etc., etc. So guys will be able to, start the learning and being able to interact with safe forms of AI as they're recognized as safe.
Yeah.
It is yeah, it's still a way off being being rolled out across our prisons, but it is something that is slowly coming in.
Yeah. I remember we started, as I said before, we started in Switzerland basic education with an offline server. And in the meantime, as the prisons got convinced that we really take care how to teach and in which way we teach the students inside prisons, and that we accept all the restrictions of the penitentiary world. So they get more confidence with us, and then they agreed also to open up this closed system in the way that we have a whitelisted access to the internet too. But it was a process of about, let's say, 10 years. So
Yes,
you really have to build up confidence
absolutely.
uh, between each other, and then things become possible.
Absolutely. I could only agree. Evidence, and this is what I said in my original speech, Thomas and all. Um, we can only make strides by moving forward in the first place. Taking those steps and showing that again, it's a demystification, showing that we don't need to be worried and scared. If we do things correctly, we can bring in all of these things and make them work because people are just people ultimately. And one thing we find with people in prison is the more responsibility, the more faith put in them, the more that they respond positively to that. So let's start to action that. Let's start to do what we know works.
I think that was a perfect final words for this webinar. So I thank you very much, Dan, for your contribution, and to all participants. We will put this webinar as a video on our EPA tube, so you can rewatch this webinar again on YouTube. So thanks a lot, Dan, for your time, for
Thank
your
you.
engagement, and hopefully you will have much success still with your students in prison, and can convince even more employers to employ also people from inside the walls and not only outside the walls. They
Absolutely.
are a resource and not a burden.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Thomas. Great
Thank
point.
you.
Thank you, everyone,
Thank
for
you.
listening.
Bye.